For centuries, the Ottoman Empire had stood as one of the most powerful forces in the world, a vast domain stretching across 3 continents. But by the dawn of the 20th century, the empire was no longer the fearsome giant it had once been. Its borders remained large, but its foundations were weakening. Economies struggled, political factions clashed, armies were exhausted, and across the Arab provinces, a silent tension began to rise. In the deserts of the Hejaz, in the markets of Damascus, in the ports of Basra, people felt something shifting, something deep, something historic. The empire that had shaped their lives for generations was beginning to crack. Chapter 2. To understand how everything began to collapse, we travel decades earlier, to a time when Ottoman rule still felt steady. Arab provinces were part of a vast network, and despite occasional tensions, a general sense of order existed. Cities thrived, trade routes operated, pilgrimage paths were protected. Local leaders worked with Ottoman governors in an uneasy but functioning balance. But beneath the surface, old frustrations simmered. Many Arab regions felt neglected compared to the empire's heartlands. Their voices in Istanbul were limited, their local customs often ignored, their economic struggles overlooked. And every year, this quiet dissatisfaction grew stronger, like a storm forming in the distance. Chapter 3. The cracks widened further as the 19th century brought rapid changes across the world. Europe industrialized, modernized, and expanded aggressively. Railways, steamships, and modern armies transformed global power. Meanwhile, the Ottoman Empire struggled to keep pace. Financial problems worsened, foreign debts piled up. European advisors gained influence, slowly shaping Ottoman decisions from within. Arab leaders noticed this shift immediately. They saw foreign diplomats gaining more power. They saw local traditions overridden by new systems. They saw their homeland becoming a pawn in global politics. The empire was no longer steering its own destiny, and the Arabs were no longer certain they wanted to follow where it was heading. Chapter 4. In the Ottoman capital, the young Turks rose to prominence, promising reform and unity. Many Arab officers and intellectuals welcomed their vision, hoping for fair representation. But the reality became far more complicated. The new rulers wanted centralization, strict control over all regions, including the Arab provinces. Arab identity, culture, and autonomy were sidelined. Arabic was pushed aside in administration. Local leaders were replaced by Istanbul's loyal officials. Suspicion replaced cooperation. What had begun as a promise of unity slowly turned into resentment. Chapter 5. In Mecca, one man felt the changing winds more than anyone else. Sharif Hussein ibn Ali, the Hashemite ruler of the holy cities. His position was respected across Arabia. His lineage traced back centuries. His authority carried weight far beyond his borders. But even he sensed the empire tightening its grip. Ottoman governors grew more controlling. Troop numbers increased in the Hejaz. Orders came directly from the capital without discussion. Sharif Hussein watched carefully. He knew history well enough to recognize the signs of an empire preparing for war and preparing to suppress anything that threatened its authority. Chapter 6. At the same time, the Arab world was undergoing an intellectual awakening. Newspapers in Beirut and Cairo published bold articles calling for reform. Writers urged unity among Arab communities. Young officers in the Ottoman army discussed the need for autonomy. Merchants supported local initiatives. Families sent their children to new schools where they learned modern ideas alongside ancient traditions. A new sense of Arab identity was forming, slowly, quietly, but powerfully. This identity was not born out of hatred for the Ottomans, but out of a longing for fairness, a desire to be seen, a need to shape their own future. Chapter 8. In 1914, the spark that would ignite the world finally came: the First World War. Nations across Europe mobilized millions of soldiers. Alliances were activated. Borders became battlegrounds. And the Ottoman Empire made the fateful decision to join the war on the side of Germany. With one signature, everything changed. Britain, France, and Russia, all powerful industrialized empires, now became direct enemies of the Ottomans. Overnight, the Arab provinces were thrust into a war they neither started nor wanted. Food became scarce, military conscription increased, governors imposed harsh measures in the name of security. Rumors spread of spies, rebels, and traitors. For ordinary Arab families, this war felt distant at first, but its consequences arrived at their doorstep with unforgiving speed. Chapter 9. As the war spread across continents, Britain saw an opportunity. They realized that if they could weaken the Ottoman Empire from within, victory would come faster, and they would gain control of strategic regions afterward. And so they turned their attention to the one leader who could change the outcome in Arabia. He controlled Mecca and Medina, cities respected across the Islamic world. He had influence with tribes. He had authority Ottomans had always struggled to replicate in the desert. If Sharif Hussein rose against the Ottomans, the entire Arabian Peninsula could ignite, and Britain knew exactly how to persuade him. Chapter 10. At first, British officials reached out cautiously. Letters were exchanged, written in carefully chosen words. Promises were made, promises of independence, unity, and a vast Arab kingdom stretching across ancient lands. Sharif Hussein hesitated. He had served the Ottomans faithfully for decades. Betraying an empire was no simple decision. The consequences would be enormous. Tribal loyalty could fracture. Holy cities could be endangered. The region could fall into chaos. But as the war intensified, as Ottoman pressure increased, as British promises grew sweeter, Sharif Hussein began to wonder, was this the moment Arabia had been waiting for? Was this the chance to reclaim Arab destiny? Or was this a step toward something far more dangerous? He read each British letter with caution. He responded with questions. He demanded clarity, boundaries, commitments. He knew that a single misstep could break the region forever. This was the moment when history paused, a moment between loyalty and liberation, fear and opportunity, empire and independence. And with this moment, the path to the Great Arab Revolt and the greatest betrayal in modern Arab history had just begun. End of Part 1. Finale 1. The Fall of the Ottoman Empire and the Great Arab Betrayal. Part 2. Chapter 11. The First World War tore through the Ottoman Empire like a sandstorm, leaving ruin in its wake. Battles raged on distant fronts, Gallipoli, the Caucasus, Mesopotamia, but the effects were felt everywhere. Villages struggled to survive, markets collapsed, plagues struck weakened cities. Entire caravans disappeared along routes once considered safe. In Arabia, the hardship was crushing. The Hejaz Railway, meant to unify the empire's Arabian provinces, now carried troops, weapons, and fear. Ottoman garrisons tightened their grip around Mecca and Medina. Sharif Hussein watched from a distance, his every move observed, his authority questioned, his future unsure. The war was no longer distant. It lived in the desert now. Chapter 12. Meanwhile, letters continued traveling across the Red Sea, quiet messages exchanged between Sharif Hussein and the British High Commissioner in Cairo, Sir Henry McMahon. Each letter carried powerful words: independence, unity, freedom. These were not casual promises. They were political weapons aimed at breaking the Ottoman hold over Arabia. Sharif Hussein read every sentence cautiously. He questioned every phrase. He measured every promise. He needed to be certain that the British meant what they said. His people's future depended on it. And so a negotiation began, one that would reshape the Middle East forever. Chapter 13. As these secret messages crossed deserts and seas, another truth unfolded. The Ottoman Empire deeply distrusted the Arab provinces. They feared rebellion. They feared communication with the enemy. They feared the rise of Arab nationalism. And so the empire acted. Arab intellectuals were arrested. Newspapers were censored. Meetings were monitored. Young Arab officers were moved away from key posts. In Damascus and Beirut, Ottoman authorities executed dozens of Arab activists suspected of plotting against the empire. These executions shocked the entire region. They revealed just how desperate the Ottomans had become. This crackdown pushed many undecided Arab leaders closer to revolt. As tensions rose, Sharif Hussein made his demands clear in writing. We seek an Arab kingdom, independent, unified, stretching across our ancient lands. He wanted recognition. He wanted borders defined. He wanted guarantees. The British responses were warm, encouraging, diplomatic, but vague. They praised Arab bravery. They promised support, they spoke of friendship, but they avoided commitment on key regions, especially Syria and Palestine. Sharif Hussein noticed the vagueness, but he also saw the growing desperation of the Ottomans. He sensed the chance for Arab independence slipping away if action was not taken soon. He was caught between a weakening empire behind him and a confident one promising him the future. While Sharif Hussein negotiated with Britain, his sons Faisal, Abdullah, Ali, and Zayd traveled across the peninsula gathering support. They met tribal leaders in hidden tents. They spoke with warriors under starlit skies. They carried messages of a unified Arab future. Whispers spread through the desert. A revolt is coming. A storm is rising. The Arabs will claim their destiny. But revolts are not fueled by words alone. They require alliances, weapons, trust, and a spark powerful enough to ignite the entire desert. Chapter 16. Far to the north, in Europe, secret meetings took place between nations that claimed to be allies. British and French officials gathered in quiet rooms filled with maps, compasses, and ink. They spoke of dividing Ottoman lands after the war. They spoke of influence, ports, and oil. They spoke of controlling the future Middle East. A British diplomat named Mark Sykes and a French diplomat named François-Georges Picot drafted an agreement, a secret document that carved the Middle East into zones of control. Not a single Arab representative was invited. Not a single Arab voice was heard. The agreement contradicted almost everything the British were promising Sharif Hussein, but he did not know. No Arab leader knew. The betrayal was written in ink long before the revolt began. Chapter 17. Back in Arabia, the Ottomans continued to lose ground. Troops starved, supplies failed, morale collapsed. Ottoman commanders begged Istanbul for reinforcements, but reinforcements never came. The empire was drowning, and every Arab province felt the tremors. Sharif Hussein realized the window to revolt was narrowing. If he waited too long, the empire might collapse on its own, and Britain would no longer need his support. If he acted too early, he could be crushed by Ottoman retaliation. History hinges on moments of impossible choices. Finally, after months of letters, negotiations, and prayer, Sharif Hussein made his decision. At dawn on June 10, 1916, as the sun rose above Mecca, the first shots of the Arab Revolt echoed across the desert. Arab flags were removed from government buildings. Arab fighters stormed garrisons. The banner of revolt, red, white, green, and black, was raised high above the holy city. News spread faster than the wind. Tribes joined the cause. Camps mobilized. Caravans altered routes to support the revolt. For the first time in centuries, Arabs united under a single banner. The Ottomans shocked the revolt. They scrambled to defend supply lines. They reinforced garrisons. They sent warnings to Istanbul. But the desert tribes were too fast, too familiar with the land, too determined. British ships supported the rebels along the Red Sea. British gold funded tribal alliances. British officers, most famously T.E. Lawrence, arrived in tribal dress to assist the revolt. Arab fighters targeted the lifeline of Ottoman rule, the Hejaz Railway. They blew up tracks, ambushed trains, and disrupted communication. Each explosion weakened the empire. Each victory added momentum to the revolt. For the Arabs, the revolt was not just a military campaign. It was hope. It was identity. It was the promise of a unified homeland. For the British, it was strategy, a way to defeat the Ottomans faster, a way to enter the Middle East as liberators, not invaders. Two sides fighting the same enemy, but dreaming of different futures. This difference would soon become the seed of the greatest political betrayal in the modern Middle East. End of Part 2.
Finale 1. The Fall of the Ottoman Empire and the Great Arab Betrayal. Chapter 21. By 1917, the Ottoman Empire was collapsing in slow motion. Entire fronts crumbled. Arab fighters captured key ports. British armies advanced through Mesopotamia. Turkish commanders sent desperate pleas for reinforcements, but there were none left to send. Arab fighters, guided by tribal knowledge and supported by British resources, pushed north through the Hejaz and into Greater Syria. Towns that had flown the Ottoman flag for centuries now welcomed the revolt. Ottoman soldiers, exhausted and starving, surrendered by the hundreds. For the first time in generations, it felt as if the Arab people were shaping their destiny again. A future of unity seemed close. A kingdom felt within reach. But far away, the real decisions were being made without them. Chapter 22. In London and Paris, British and French officials met in private rooms lit by dim lamps and heavy with cigar smoke. On their tables lay maps, not of Europe, but of the Middle East. Borders were drawn with rulers, regions were labeled with colors, territories were labeled with initials, B for British control, F for French control. Syria and Lebanon were promised to France. Iraq and the Gulf were marked for Britain. Palestine was placed under international administration. This document, this quiet piece of paper, carried a name that would shape the entire 20th century: the Sykes-Picot Agreement. Signed long before the Arab Revolt even began, hidden from every Arab leader, contradicting every promise Britain had made to Sharif Hussein. The betrayal was complete long before anyone knew it. Chapter 23. In the desert, Arab fighters continued their advance, unaware of the storm waiting ahead. T.E. Lawrence admired the courage of the tribes. Faisal led the northern campaign with discipline and diplomacy. Abdullah coordinated alliances with tribal leaders. Arab flags rose over countless towns. It felt like a new dawn. But the British celebrated each victory for a different reason. It brought them closer to capturing Ottoman territory for themselves. Two revolutions were unfolding at once. One made of Arab hope, one made of European ambition. Chapter 24. When the Ottomans finally retreated from Damascus, Arab troops entered the ancient city in triumph. Crowds cheered, flowers rained on the rioters, shopkeepers opened their stalls in celebration. The city had not seen such hope in decades. Faisal entered as a liberator, confident he would soon lead a new Arab kingdom from this historic capital. For a moment, history paused. For a moment, it felt like the promises were real. But moments do not last. Chapter 25. Just weeks later, French officials arrived in Damascus carrying documents, signatures, and international agreements. They declared Syria a French mandate. They informed local leaders that European powers, not Arab voices, would decide the region's future. Faisal was stunned. He confronted them, arguing passionately for Arab independence, reminding them of British promises. But the British stood silent. Diplomacy collapsed, tension rose, and the betrayal became impossible to deny. Chapter 26. When Arab volunteers tried to resist French control, the French military responded with overwhelming force. Battles erupted around Maysalun. Arab fighters, outnumbered and outgunned, fought desperately to defend their land. They were brave, they were determined, but bravery cannot stop artillery. When the dust settled, French forces entered Damascus. Faisal was exiled. The Arab kingdom of Syria lasted only a few months. The dream Sharif Hussein had been promised, an Arab nation from the Red Sea to the Mediterranean, was shattered. Chapter 27. News spread quickly across Arabia. In markets, people whispered, "We were deceived. We were used. We fought for a promise that never existed." Tribal leaders felt anger. Families felt heartache. Fighters felt betrayed by those who had called them allies. In Mecca, Sharif Hussein received the truth. The same British officials who once wrote flattering promises now delivered cold explanations. They claimed the agreement was necessary. They claimed circumstances had changed. They claimed the Arabs would still receive some form of independence. But nothing could hide the truth. Britain had never intended to deliver on its promises. Chapter 28. Across the Arab world, borders were drawn without consultation. New nations were created without consent. Foreign mandates replaced Ottoman governors. European flags flew where Arab hopes once lived. In Iraq, rebellion erupted. In Syria, resistance movements formed. In Palestine, conflicting promises ignited future turmoil. In Arabia, Sharif Hussein struggled to understand how everything had fallen apart so quickly. The Middle East was not liberated. It was rearranged. Chapter 29. The collapse of the Ottoman Empire had ended centuries of rule, but it did not create Arab freedom. Instead, it opened the door for new foreign powers to control the region. Sykes-Picot became the blueprint for the modern Middle East. A blueprint drawn by strangers. A blueprint written in secrecy. A blueprint paid for with Arab sacrifices. And yet, the story did not end here, because from betrayal often rises determination. From disappointment comes a new fight. From broken promises comes new leadership. Finale 1 closes as the camera returns to the Arabian desert, silent, vast, glowing with the last light of sunset. The revolt had ended. The empire had fallen. The betrayal had been revealed. But a new era was beginning. New alliances would form. New rivals would emerge. New movements would rise across the Arab world. The map had changed, but the struggle for identity, autonomy, and power was only beginning. This is where Finale 2 begins, the story of mandates, resistance, rising nationalism, and the next chapter in the Arab struggle for destiny. End of Finale 1.